Pokémon. You've gotta catch them all, Ash. By Brymanix8794. It was the first day of June. Ash Ketchum woke up in his bedroom, in the house where he lived in. He felt rested because he had slept during the night, and now it was a morning. He got out of bed and was just about to start his Sega Saturn when he heard his mother calling from the kitchen in the downstairs, and then he remembered what day it was, and his good mood disappeared into the floor. Today was the day when he would receive his Pokémon and become a trainer, just like all the other kids. Ash hated the other kids, and he thought they were silly with their Pokémon. He wanted to go to school and learn stuff, but his mother had told him all his life, "Ash, you've got to become a trainer, just like your father. Ash, you've got to catch them all." He went down into the kitchen on the downstairs, and his mother smiled at him. "Today is your big day, honey," she said across the kitchen. "Mom," said Ash, "I don't want to catch Pokémon. I don't care. I want to learn stuff. I want to go to school." His mother looked angry all of a suddenly in her eyes. She threw her sandwich on the floor of the kitchen and said, "Ash, you will never become anything unless you catch all of the Pokémon. You have to do what your father could never complete. It has always been your destiny." Ash finished his tasty breakfast that had been on the table all the time without saying a word to his mother that was still in the kitchen, staring at him with her angrily eyes. There had been some poke bacon in the breakfast, and Ash really liked that, but it couldn't save the day. He took his cap and his backpack and left the house in which he lived and had always lived. Pallet Town was a small town where not many people lived because it was so small and no one wanted to live there. Ash took out a cigarette from his pocket and lit it with some matches. He didn't want to become like his father. The only girl his father had ever been with was his mother, and she had been a nerdy girl with a fetish for Pokémon trainers. And his father was now gone, because he had died on Cinnamon Island trying to catch some Pokémon. He saw a boy next to the grocery store playing with his Rattata, and he felt sad. That kid would grow up and try to become a trainer, but he would never catch them all. No one would. Pokémon were hopeless. Ash wanted to study. History, literature, psychology, anything. He wanted a future and a job and to be able to make money. But his mother had decided he would become a Pokémon trainer. Besides, she said, they would not afford school because she didn't have a job, and she needed the money for other things. All of a sudden, someone bumped into Ash so that he fell down onto the dirty ground, because in Pallet Town there were no streets. Ash looked up and he saw the smiling faces of Gary, who had bullied Ash all of his childhood, and always made up some excuses when Ash told someone, so he was never caught, and everyone said that Gary was a good and smart boy who wanted to catch Pokémon. But Ash did always think that Gary was an evil and dumb, fucked up kid with no future, because he wanted to train Pokémon like everybody else. "What the fuck?" said Ash. Gary laughed and smiled some more, and then he said to Ash from the corner of his mouth, "You are never going to catch all of the Pokémon, because I am going to do that, and then everybody will love me, and they will hate you, because they already love me, and you are worthless scum." Ash boiled and turned red with anger and the fury and disappointment and sadness and confusion, but he told Gary, "I don't care. You are fucked up and will never catch all the Pokémon. I will laugh when you are dead and dance on your grave if you even have one." Gary just laughed and took Ash's hat and ran away down the muddy path that led to Professor Auk's laboratory, where he and Ash would get their first Pokémons. In Auk's lab said everyone that there was real black magic and big machines, and everybody loved Auk because he had almost caught all of the Pokémons except for the rare ones, and he knew a lot of stuff. They always said that Auk is a great man and I would like to be like him. Ash hated them. They all knew that and were aware of the fact. Ash came into the laboratory, still angry, and covered in dust and mud from the ground onto which Gary had pushed him down upon. Auk looked at him with disappointing in his eyes and said, "Well, look who has finally come here to do what must be done by him. Are you ready, Ash?" Ash felt even more angry, and Gary smiled evilly. Ash went up to Auk, and Gary and Auk took out a Pikachu. Gary already had 3 other Pokémon, a Charmander and a Squirtle and a Bulbasaur, and they all already looked stupid and evil. Auk said, "Ash, this is your Pokémon because it is the only one I have left. You should have been here earlier. Now Gary got all the good Pokémon. But he is at least better than you." Ash said nothing. Gary smiled more evil than before, and Ash knew that he was just stupid and ignorant, but still hated him so very much. Then Auk took out 2 Pokédexes and some balls from a box and gave them to the boys. "These are for catching some more Pokémon in the tall grass. Do you think you can even do that, Ash, or should I just give them to Gary?" Ash tried to keep calm, but he was burning from the inside with rage and anger. Auk gave the balls and the Pokédex to Ash, and he took them, but then Gary kicked him in the nuts, and Ash fell to the ground, and he felt the pain. Gary and Auk both laughed, but then Ash went so mad that he picked up one of the Pokéballs and threw it on Gary, and he was sucked up into the ball, and where he had stood his clothes and balls and Pokémon were left. Auk stared with his mouth open and just whispered, "That's not supposed to happen." But something changed inside the now dark heart of Ash, and he took up another ball and threw it on Auk, who also disappeared into the ball, and all his clothes and things were left on the floor of the lab. Now everybody in the lab screamed in fear, but the doors had been locked, and Ash just went forward and took more balls and started throwing them at all the people who was there inside, and they all got caught. Now it was the turn of Ash to laugh, but it was not a happy laughter, because it was a crazy and mad laugh. He picked up all the balls that he had caught the people inside and put them in his backpack, and then he kicked the Pikachu until it bled and lied still, and then he left the lab. Ash walked into the Pokemart and stole all of the Pokeballs that were inside there, and then he kept on going home. Whenever he met someone he threw a ball at them, and they were caught, and Ash kept all the balls and the people inside to have them as slave. In the end there were no more people in the small town of Palette, and he went home. Now his mother would be happy, because he had finally caught them all, and he would catch her too, because otherwise it would not be all, and she had been very specific that he had to catch them all, and now he would. She looked scared when she saw the deep darkness in his eyes, but Ash did not hesitate, and threw a ball at the woman who had given birth to him, and she was caught inside the ball just like everyone else. Then Ash left the town to never return. 12 years later, Ash had caught everyone in the world, and he used them as naked slaves and lived in their houses, and he was now 19, so sometimes he had sex with them in their own beds, and they had to obey because Ash had caught them with his balls. He felt very proud that he had finally done what his mother had asked of him his entire life. He met some people and pretended to be their friend, like Brock and Misty, but then he caught them and they screamed for help because they didn't think he would do that, but he did. He had the whole Team Rocket caught, and the police could do nothing. So Ash could do anything, and he was the king of the Pokemon world, but since he had no friends left, but only slaves, he got tired of life, and one day when he was laying on the floor in a shower in the Cerulean gym after tormenting slave Misty like he did every day, he had enough and hit himself in the head with a Pokeball until he was caught, and so all the people in the world were now caught in Pokeballs, and this was the end of everything. Game over.